Hey, just a quick note before this episode begins. This episode was recorded in January, so apologies for any dated references. Now, on with the show. Hey, and welcome back to Game Talk. I'm your host, Sam, and beyond today I'm joined by Connor.
Hey, guys.
And Mike.
Hello.
And today we're going to talk about moral panics in video games. So what do I mean by that? I mean the general overreaction of the public when a game that is perceived as controversial releases. Case in point, the most famous case in point probably, Grand Theft Auto. I feel like every time a Grand Theft Auto game has been released, you see it on CNN and other news sites with people who, quite frankly, don't know what they're talking about, saying things like, how are we giving products like these to our kids? This is making kids more violent, more misbehaving, etc. So there's no shortage of these throughout the years, but I do feel like, as a whole, we've sort of grown past that as an industry, but it still rears its head every now and then.
Did either of your parents ever buy into them?
Oh,
No.
yeah, for sure.
No.
Well, not... Okay, so my parents, growing up, like, they were definitely of the fact that I shouldn't be playing as many video games as I was.
Yeah,
And maybe there was some truth in that, but they never... And, like, whenever they saw me playing violent video games, they'd be like, why are you playing that? So I guess maybe they did buy into it a little bit, but not to the extent where they were like, don't
They
do
kind
that.
of did, but it was more like we're just not going to buy him like GTA. And then I did play GTA once, and they're like, oh, wait, that isn't as bad as I thought it'd be. That's
Yeah,
fine then.
I wasn't allowed to play rated M games until later than my peers. I think I was 14 when I was allowed to play them, maybe 15. So, like,
yeah,
still,
the rated M
yeah.
games were a big thing for me, too.
M game,
and
I was
remember
allowed to play M games, which...
But I'm
remember
actually like I don't think kids should be playing GTA. Like that's not a moral panic. That's like
yeah, I do agree with that.
inappropriate material. Yeah. I
And
think
I was
parents should be
also sort of
involved.
late on rated M games as well. Like the only, man, it's so long ago now, but I think the only way I could get my parents to budge was just like pointing at my friends and being like, hey, they're all doing it, why can't I do it? And eventually they had to like give in and buy me Call of Duty or whatever. Was Halo 3 rated M? No.
I think it
Was
was. Yeah. I think all of the Halos were.
Okay, Halo 3 might have been my first rated M game then.
So wildly enough, I think one of the ones that sticks in my head for a moral panic was actually Mass Effect. When Mass Effect came out in 2008,
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Fox News
For sure.
aired a segment calling the game a porn simulator.
Like,
yeah,
you can
I
control
remember
your
that very
character.
vividly.
I wonder
Like-
what they had to say about Baldur's Gate.
No, I don't think they care anymore. Back in 2008, that was scandalous to have a sex scene in a video game. Now you can just throw like straight up nipples out there and they don't care. Like
90s and 2000s, this was like all the rage. Like, occasionally you hear about it nowadays, but like definitely not as much as back then. I distinctly remember the Mass Effect one, dude. Like it was,
yeah,
they were totally mischaracterizing that game.
I don't remember my parents making any decisions based on these things that I don't kind of agree with now, except I remember being like 17 or 18 and getting in a heated argument with my stepmom about whether or not video games made kids violent. And
Yeah.
for the record, study after study has shown that there's no correlation.
No,
I
but that was
mean-
perhaps the biggest one, right? Like
Yeah, no,
time
I
and
mean, just
time
the
again,
idea
we saw
in
that
general-
argument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a nonsense argument. It
Yeah.
just has no. If video games are doing it, so are books, so are movies. Just there's nothing to it.
like a lot of the biggest moral panics. I always think about Jack Thompson's whole crusade against violent video games.
I'm surprised that the first one you guys brought up was GTA, because the one that comes to my mind instantly is Mortal Kombat. Because it ended in the founding of the ESRB.
Oh wow, I didn't realize Mortal Kombat was what caused the founding of the ESRB, but
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
Mortal Kombat is gratuitously violent.
Yes, it is. It was there were trials and everything. And Nintendo and Sega just about ruined it for everybody else because they both wanted to get up and blame the other one instead of just
That's crazy.
police. Finally, in the end, there was almost going to be legislation to censor video games, and in the end, they managed to pull their head out and form the ESRB to self-police.
Yeah, I think what's wild about like the moral panics and everything is that people would legitimately believe that like you're being trained to kill. These are killing games.
Well, that's
And
the other
especially back in like the 90s. We all know what Doom looks like.
Yeah.
In what world is this
Oh
a
my God.
hyper-realistic murder simulator? Like, what are you smoking?
Do you remember the what? Oh my God, what was the? It was the school shooting.
Columbine.
Yeah, Columbine. The shooters had made a
Columbine.
bunch of Doom wads. Yeah.
Yeah, they made Doom wads, and that was like,
Yeah,
they were
that was-
training to kill.
Yeah.
No, I think they just had a hobby, and it was
Yeah.
completely unrelated to their atrocity.
Completely unrelated to the fact that they were a mass murdering psychopath.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they-
because
That
was
would
just
happen
their hobby.
independently of video games.
Thousands of people also made Doom wads and didn't
Yeah.
shoot up a school.
Yeah,
Right.
like, there's millions of Doom wads, and not everybody who's made a Doom wad has shot up a school, so obviously it wasn't the Doom wad's fault.
Yeah.
Yeah, and speaking of shootings, which I didn't think I'd say that today, but speaking of shootings, like I think shootings are when this argument gets brought up, like
A lot of the
most
time,
often
yeah.
in the
All the
in the
time.
modern day.
It's
right?
easier
Like
to
every
blame
time there's a
media
mass
than it is to
shooting,
blame guns.
you
Yeah.
hear like I guess right wingers in Congress point to video games to be like, hey, we need to get these video games.
It's because they're
And
playing
not
Call
the
of
actual
Duty.
guns themselves, which is a separate whole discussion. But
The one I can't believe, and I think the only reason is that the people making these arguments are too old to understand it. There's maybe an argument for VR. Like,
No, listen.
it's
okay.
a little crazy. Gorn is a little crazy.
Okay, I play Blade and Sorcery, and I let my inner caveman come out, okay? I know they're not real, so I can be as brutal as I want.
Yeah, but
Like,
VR
if they were
has
real, I'd
some-
feel like remorse, but I don't feel remorse destroying virtual things, you know?
I
But here's the
agree
thing,
with
like,
that. But
video
VR
games
has-
are an escape, right? Like they're a stress reducer. Like if anything, I think doing these violent things in video games lowers your violent tendencies in real life.
Yeah.
I agree with that, but you can
Like-
learn how to actually operate a firearm in VR, and like
Yeah, and I also learned how to
the
stab
skills will
somebody
be exact-
38
well,
times
Nobody
in VR.
has to learn to
Like-
stab somebody.
Yeah,
Children do
right.
it on accident all the time.
I learned how to stab them effectively. What do you mean?
But I don't think there should be a moral panic around VR. I'm just shocked that there hasn't been yet.
Yeah, I think largely people leave it alone until like another big tragedy comes up, and then they use video games to deflect from the actual issues until people stop talking about it, and then
Yeah.
things just go back to normal.
Yeah,
'cause he
America
played-
moment.
Yeah, as he played GTA, he learned how to shoot up schools from that one time in GTA you could shoot up a hospital. You know?
I mean, the closest analog I can think of to, a game actually simulating something horrific like that is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, where they
Oh,
have
yeah,
that
that was
optional level, right? Where you
no
can
Russian.
no Russian, yeah,
how
where
did
you can
that
skip
not
it.
generate more controversy? Because I remember there not a lot of people like
It's at the
talk
end of
about
the
how
game.
controversial.
I bet a lot of people never
Controversial,
saw
but-
it. People don't finish.
No,
video
no,
games.
dude, it was like in the middle of the
Mission
game.
2.
What? I thought it was
It's
Yeah, yeah,
literally
on a level.
Mission 2.
I've never played
No.
Call of
Like-
Duty, so
No Russian is Mission 2, and it gives you the option at the start of the game not even to play it. Like you can skip
Really?
it before
That's
it even
crazy.
starts.
They're like this. They put like a content warning at the beginning of the mission.
They knew it was controversial, so they
That's
gave you an
wild.
option not to play it because it was sensitive. It made sense in the plot though. Like they successfully wrote a plot around shooting up an airport.
wow.
And spoilers, by the way, at the end of it, you die too.
Yeah, you get flat. You, the American plant in the Russian gang, get shot and left to die to start a war against the United States.
Spoilers for a 15-year-old game.
Yeah, because you, the American, were responsible for the airport getting shot up, not the Russian terrorists.
Yes.
So yeah, it was essentially one big false flag operation that you got implicated in.
But yeah, I think I don't know, man. Like the violence and sex are the two big things that video games always get brought up for, right? But
And
like,
now,
it-
now sex is so normalized in video games that like I can open the front page of Steam right now. Hold on.
well, that's
Yeah, Steam's one place.
Yeah,
I think
Steam's
a
one place. It's
PlayStation
just a
Network
lot now.
store would be a better place to
Yeah,
look.
Steam doesn't care. Look, the new and trending third game. That's a sex game.
Yeah, There's a lot of sex games on Steam.
PC has always been a little bit more Wild West. Like, obviously on Nintendo consoles, Sony consoles, it's a bit more controlled.
Ever since Steam opened up their storefront, which I agree with, I think it should be open. You can still turn off adult content.
Yeah.
But it should be open.
I'm glad we live in the timeline where like all this stuff got sorted out and we didn't have video game censorship, because we came awfully close.
Extremely close.
Now as like a developer, you're not punished for wanting to release an adult game. Where previously with like GameStop and everything and back in Brick and Mortar, if you release like an adult game, it was never getting sold. It was just gonna languish.
Have you guys ever heard of General Custer's Revenge?
The Atari sex game? Yeah.
Yes, the Atari sex
game. The one
game.
where, like, what is it? Is it the one where they tie, like, this really Atari-esque native woman and just have Custer run up on her?
Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a really
it's so bad.
Awful game. I only know about it from the Angry Video Game Nerd.
Okay, people were, like, if a media's gonna have porn, because if people were sitting there getting off to Atari graphics...
Yeah,
you'll make do. Like people will make do. They'll find
a way. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm glad that video games don't get censored. One that I don't like is the game that you only have ever heard of because of the moral panic around it. Which the game I'm thinking of is Hatred.
Oh yeah, Hatred wasn't even good.
An extremely middling at best, like action adventure game that was just.
You were just a sociopath.
Yeah, you were just like going around a neighborhood killing people, I think. And that was the only reason anybody ever heard of it, because it was... I don't know anybody who's ever played it because it was so boring. It reviewed
there's
poorly.
A difference between someone making a game to make a point and someone just making a game as controversial as they can just because they can. And it seems like Hatred's in the latter camp.
Yeah, no, like, it definitely... GTA has merit. Hatred does not. Yeah. Like... Yeah.
Yeah, and it's frustrating too because when games come out like Hatred, then it sort of poisons the well of discussion again. Where it's just like people point to it and are like, "Oh, hey, this game's like corrupting children and it shouldn't be released."
Mass shooter.
I would argue that video games do, and this is something that none of the people arguing against video games are ever smart enough to put together. But video games do, in my opinion, embarrassingly focus on combat. Yeah. Like We have not gamified very many other things. Until recently. I think it's gotten better in the past 10 years. I do. But by and large, if you buy a game, you're gonna be killing guys. Like, that's just what video games are 9 times out of 10.
I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, like, Nintendo for escaping that trend.
Yeah, but even Mario's jumping on Goombas. Link
I'm thinking about, like, You're not killing anything in Animal Crossing.
You're not killing anything in Animal Crossing. You're not killing anything in Outer Wilds. You're not killing... there are lots of examples against it, but the majority of games are about killing stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's still... I don't know, it's kind of embarrassing. Like, I mean, I guess most blockbuster movies have violence in them as well. Violence sells, but movies had... stuff where it was just dudes sitting in a room talking for a long time before video games did.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. And like there are a lot of non-violent movies, like comedies,
a lot.
Romances.
Yeah.
Dramas. A lot of dramas even don't have. So there is something to consider there. Like video games, like violence is almost an intrinsic part of video games' DNA, like in their history. And it is another interesting thing to consider where this just popped into my head where like rated R movies almost always do worse at the box office than like rated PG-13 and PG and G movies, right?
And that's not necessarily... Rated M video games sell pretty well.
That's what I was going to say. Rated M video games do not have that problem. So... I just think it's fascinating that comparison point where like the more maybe sensitive video games that tackle more adult topics, they don't seem to be people don't seem to shy away from buying them.
Well, it's also just easier to get a video game than it is to see a movie, especially now that everything's digital. Nobody's checking my ID when I download a game on Steam. All I have to do is enter my age and then I download the game. Whereas if you go to a theater, you actually like can't buy a ticket to a rated R movie if you're under 17, I think.
Yeah.
So you just can't do it.
And that probably like incentivizes a lot of filmmakers to push the rating down if they can.
Yeah, a lot of
because
movies
they know like a lot of profit is left on the table if it's rated M when it could be PG-13.
A lot of movies are watered down to get the PG-13 rating. I remember how big of a deal it was that Deadpool was going to be rated R.
Yeah.
And they still released a PG-13 version of that movie, I'm pretty sure.
Boy, am I glad games don't have that problem.
Yeah, I'm glad that video games don't feel compromised in that way. Although they still are artistically compromised a lot of the time to meet mass market like ideals, I would say. The biggest modern example of not happening is like Baldur's Gate, I don't think is compromised. But AAA games are going to try to match the ideals of the market most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
They're not going to ask you difficult questions or put you in compromising situations like a game like Omori might. Indie games are just more adventurous that way.
Yeah.
But, okay, so speaking of... So we talked about GTA, Mass Effect, Rockstar games in general. Are there any other big ones you guys can remember growing up?
I mean...
Pokemon.
Yeah,
really?
Pokemon
Had it was mostly manufactured by PETA, I think, but there was an animal abuse moral panic around Pokemon.
Wasn't that kind of incorporated into the plot in like Black and White?
I don't know. I never played Black and White or Black 2 and White 2.
Oh, okay, yeah. I remember playing those games. It was like, why is the plot getting kind of real here? They were like, Pokemon should be free, you're enslaving them. And I was like, dang, this is a lot for a Pokemon story. But yeah, that's crazy that, well, PETA does off-the-wall kind of stuff all the time, but it makes sense that they would go for Pokemon.
And then it's arguably a moral panic about, but I would argue a justified one, about gambling in games like Counter-Strike and any gacha games.
This is where we can get to some... Yeah, this is where it gets a little interesting, because I think there is an argument to be had there. Like, a lot of these gacha games, these loot box games, are literally designed to get you to spend money.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair to say that a moral panic is always bad. Sometimes a video game is doing something deeply immoral and it makes me panic.
Yeah, and I do feel like we've seen a lot of companies sort of back off of the loot box thing, right?
Well,
like,
they got very close to being litigated against. So
I do feel like I think what was the tipping point? Was it Star Wars Battlefront 2?
Yeah, I think it probably
that feels like that was
the
tipping point.
Most egregious one because it was
for loot boxes.
It was what you had to play for 80 hours or something to unlock Darth Vader in that game or something stupid like that. And they had the most famous Reddit comment of all time, the most downvoted Reddit comment, which was about the we want our players to feel a sense of
satisfaction of progression, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that one being a sort of tipping point, and then, like, obviously we still get loot box games today, but I don't think any of them were as bad as Battlefront 2, and I think the quantity of loot box games has decreased from, like, the late 2010s.
Yeah, they pulled them out of Rocket League completely, which is good because I was opening them. Yeah. I spent probably $40 or $60.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I get it, man. Like, it feels like opening a pack of Yu-Gi-Oh cards or something.
Yeah,
like,
it feels good. It
feel that dopamine when you get something shiny, like.
Yeah, and I did too. I got some pretty rare drops in Rocket League. I still use them to this day.
Yeah,
they're not rare, quote unquote, anymore. They're just harder to get. You have to I don't actually know how it works anymore. It's very confusing. Yeah,
so that was sort of a justified moral quandary.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm more interested in the unjustified ones.
Yeah, they're more...
that we can sort of poke fun at.
I can't think of any others off the top of my head. There was another one in the... What's it called? It was an FMV game. Night Trap it was called. Night Trap. Have you heard of this?
I've never heard of this. No.
So Night Trap was an FMV game. I think it was on the Sega CD. And it was it's on Steam now. That's hilarious. But it was originally on the Sega CD, and it is an interactive movie. This is just off of the Wikipedia page. An interactive movie video game that uses full motion video to present story and gameplay. The player is instructed by an in-game police squad to watch live surveillance footage of the Martin household and trigger traps to capture anyone that is seen endangering the house guests. And it's like
Home
really,
Alone kind of stuff?
Yeah, but it's bad acting, and I think there's like some like women in their underwear and stuff in it. I don't know. I've never actually played it, but there were United States congressional hearings about Night
That's
Trap.
crazy.
Yeah.
Was it that big of a
1993.
game? Like,
No, I don't think anybody really liked it. The nightgown scene. In the nightgown scene, Lisa is captured by the enemies and taken off camera. This scene was cited as promoting violence against women at a United States Senate hearing.
okay.
Man, they really have Senate hearings about anything, honestly.
Yeah.
You know what? Arguably, the biggest
I feel
moral
like the
panic
Sims
was,
have gotten panicked too, haven't they?
I have not heard this one.
Well, what I was gonna say is D&D.
Yeah, D&D's a big
Yeah,
one.
Like in the 80s and 90s, people saw that as some sort of like weird satanic club activity,
yeah, it
and
must
kids
be
were shunned.
It must be really weird for kids watching Stranger Things now and seeing like some of the ramifications of the satanic panic around D&D, and like
Yeah,
it
that
just
was-
doesn't make any sense now.
That was wild. People were like, "They're summoning Satan in the D&D." Like, what do you mean? They're just pretending to be elves.
It's a bunch of nerds playing pretend. It's fun.
It's fun. Like, what do you mean?
All those kids who grew up playing D&D were absolutely vindicated with Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh my god, yeah.
Honestly,
It's like, that's what we were trying to tell you guys.
it was just normal people playing things.
It was really good.
Yeah.
I don't know if it was really good back then. It's really good now.
Well, I don't know. Like, Baldur's Gate is the DNA of Baldur's Gate
Yeah.
is D&D, and
It's
D&D
D&D 5th edition.
Yeah.
is good. Yeah.
Every time something happens, someone tries to pin it on video games or movies or sex on TV, you know?
Yeah.
What about those good old fashioned. I'm not going to finish that joke. I'm not going to finish it. But
Okay.
I couldn't take myself seriously enough to finish that joke. But, like, you look at what they were rallying against, and it looks hilarious in hindsight. Every time.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like the kind of the growing pains, I guess, of a new form of media. Like, I'm curious to see if I hopped into a time machine and traveled back into, like, I don't know, like the early 1900s. Would people be saying the same thing about film?
Maybe.
Yes. They did. Yeah.
So,
And, before that, it was books. You were sitting around reading all day and rotting your brain. And no, parents don't like it when their kids do something different than they did growing up. I don't even know if this counts as a moral panic, but the whole, like, video games will rot your brain thing. Like, I remember my parents telling me that all the time, and it's just,
yeah.
no, like, okay, should I sit and watch soap operas? Like,
Yeah.
what do you
Or, like,
what do you want?
Watch Full House for the 13th time.
Or like, no, this is just a condemnation of the way America's built in general. But what do you want me to do? We live 15 miles from the next interesting thing. Like, yeah, I'm gonna sit here and play my video games.
Literally, like, growing up in
Am
the
I
middle of
supposed to-
nowhere, video
Yeah.
games, like, why don't you go outside? Like, what am I going to go do? Stare at the forest again for the third time this week?
Yeah,
No, I
like,
can sit here and play Dota all day.
I have one friend in the neighborhood. My closest friend after that is like a 6-mile walk, and you're not gonna drive me there.
Yeah. Like,
I
I
don't know.
think maybe I'm just speaking for my parents here, but I think my parents were opposed to it when I was young because they were worried I should be doing something more productive with my time. I think that was always
Yeah,
their argument.
I just
But
don't know what that would have
It
been.
worked out.
Yeah. I don't know. I knew I was a better reader than any of my classmates because I played video games. Like,
Yeah.
and I also learned critical thinking from solving puzzles all the time. Like, my peers weren't doing that. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, in hindsight, it's easy to see that, but
Yeah.
back in the day, that was not
Yeah.
really picked up on.
yeah,
No,
people
and,
didn't
like,
think about that.
I'll sit here and dunk on iPad kids. So like, maybe 20 years from now, they'll be telling me what value they were getting out of that Skibbity toilet
I don't know,
video
man.
or whatever.
Oh,
I don't
no.
know.
Back,
I
we're
love
talking about Skibbity
toilet.
again.
Yeah, we're back on Skibbity toilet again.
I would argue there's a
Stop.
panic going on about Skibbity toilet right now.
Probably.
I'm panicking for sure.
Yeah, I'm
millennials
losing it.
The millennials are furious that they don't understand what's cool anymore.
Yeah.
But
Why
it's
do you
not
call me
cool.
out like this? Yeah, I get it. I'm not cool anymore.
When I was growing up, and I think I might have told this story on the podcast before, but maybe on my 10th birthday, that sounds right. One of my friends got me a copy of Street Fighter 3. Was it 3 or 4? I forget. I think let's just say 3.
Yeah.
For my birthday, and it was rated T, and I'd never played a rated T game before.
You hadn't played Smash Bros. Melee?
Let me think. This must have been before Smash Bros. Melee.
Wow. Okay.
I remember this was the first rated T game that I had received.
Yeah.
And my parents were like, yeah, you can't play this. And so they just confiscated it when I got home with it. And I had to spend, I forget how long it took, but weeks, months maybe, asking them, hey, can I please play this game? And eventually they finally relented. And I was like, oh, I'm really bad at Street Fighter. And you actually have to practice to get good. So, but I still remember playing it just when you're a kid, right? And you get told you can't have something. You just want it more.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, all the time.
when I finally got my hands on that Street Fighter game, I played it and I was like, this is the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
I remember playing the campaign or whatever with multiple characters, which was just a series of fights.
Yeah.
But oh man. Yeah.
The one for me was Destroy All Humans. That was a rated T game, and I'd been playing it at my buddy Brock's house for I have no idea how long it actually was, but it felt like I'd been playing it for over a year. We played it every time I went over. We loved that game. And I think we'd beaten it more than once, even. We just loved that game. And I just remember my mom decided one day, I was 9 or 10 years old or something, and my mom just suddenly decided, I don't think you should play rated T games anymore. And I wasn't allowed to play it. And I was like, Mom, I own 4 or 5 rated T games. And she deliberated about that and then decided, I guess those are fine, because she didn't want to take away something I already owned.
Yeah.
Super Smash Brothers, I played all the time. I remember the same thing happened to another friend of mine. He and I had played Super Smash Bros. Together all the time, and his mom just decided one day he wasn't allowed to play Super Smash Brothers anymore, which Super Smash Brothers being rated T I think is a little silly, but...
I mean, it's violence,
Yeah, I guess even if there's no blood or whatever, you're still...
Yeah, they're still walloping each other, I guess, but
Walloping.
I also had just fought my friends, as a kid sometimes.
Yeah.
So...
You get into scraps.
Yeah.
But, okay, so rated T... Mike, you never had any issues with rated T games, right?
No, I mean, my parents were really banned me from playing Zelda all my life for most of my life because they thought I was obsessed with it. Yeah, when it wasn't even that, it wasn't even the game that I was fixated on at the time. It was Wild Arms, so they banned me from the wrong game. I'm not even kidding, because I fucking whistled something in kindergarten, and they're like, "Oh no, he's gone all wrong. We're gonna take Zelda from him for the rest of his life."
Yeah, I don't know, man.
I was deprived.
I guess I'm trying to empathize. It's got to be hard being a parent. You're especially with this new thing you don't really understand, video games. My parents didn't understand video games, but it's just you got to think is this okay for my child to do? Is this going to ruin them forever someday?
I don't want to speak against your parents because I don't know your situation. I'm wholly unwilling to give that to my parents because they never bothered to even look at it.
What's wild is that video games won't get you anything, and here we are recording a podcast purely about video games for 7 years or whatever.
And my career.
I mean, not just us. I mean, video games are the biggest industry in the world, entertainment industry in the world.
I learned how to code in middle school because I wanted to make them, and now I'm a software engineer.
Yeah, literally. I learned music because I liked video game music. It obviously has encouraged people to see their passions beyond. And I mean, I haven't shot up a school. Have any of you?
Nah.
So obviously, it's not something that's going to cause you to kill people.
There was one more panic that affected me personally as a kid. I was allowed to play these games, but I remember I had a friend that I really wanted to play MapleStory with me when I was a kid.
Oh no.
And his mom was convinced that he was going to be sex trafficked by people on MapleStory.
Wow, that's like...
How do parents come up with this kind of
See,
stuff?
okay,
I don't know.
for most of my youth, my parents were like, you shouldn't talk to people on the internet. And it's like, that's what I do for a living, kind of, almost. All my friends are internet friends. Like, what do you mean? I'm going to PAX with people I met playing Valorant years ago.
I feel like, hypothetically, if I was a parent, I wouldn't want my child jumping in chat till at least middle school, I would say.
We were in
I can sort of
school.
understand.
We were in the 7th grade when this was happening. And yeah, I was playing MapleStory all the time, and I wanted my buddy to play with me. And his mom was just convinced, and you know, the argument at the time, we thought she was worried about us like swearing and stuff because we learned swear words on MapleStory or whatever.
Oh no, that's so badass.
So we were hearing worse stuff every single day. Obviously,
yeah, Mom, I learned
deeply
how to
racist
swear
stuff in a middle school
Story.
in West Virginia. But no, I think she was worried he was going to give out his address and get kidnapped or something. I don't know.
Oh my
It
God.
was really strange. I would let my kid play MapleStory. Well,
I would too.
that wouldn't be the reason I stopped my kid from playing MapleStory.
Stop him from getting the addiction that has taken you for years.
Yeah, that's the trick.
The addiction thing I can sort of get, right? Like, MMOs and a lot of, like, the gacha games are designed to be highly addictive.
Yeah, they're addictive.
And when you're a child that hasn't really fully formed their brain yet, like, that really could ruin you for life. So you do have to be a little careful around those, I think.
Yeah.
But again, like, how the heck are your parents who don't know anything about this new crazy form of media, how are they able to distinguish between
They should read about
World of
it.
Warcraft and Super Mario, right?
Yeah.
They should read about it, like the same way we did as kids.
Precisely why my parents banned me from playing Zelda games as a child is that they thought, like, it was going to be my one personality trait. And boy, were they wrong. That's not my first tattoo now, is it? It should have been. That would have been so funny.
No, because I did fall into the addiction hole with Mabinogi for sure. And I had a friend who fell into it harder. I remember him, like, he quit Boy Scouts. He wasn't doing his homework. He was he was just playing that video game. Granted, it wasn't Mabinogi's fault because he did the same thing with Call of Duty 2 years later, but it was messy.
Man, I just can't believe I quit going to class for a week for Fallout 4. Like, honestly, that wasn't worth it. Look at it back in retrospect. That's my greatest regret, was not going to class.
For that.
Yeah, was not going to class for Fallout 4. Like, what was I thinking?
For a week?
No, it wasn't a week. I stayed for a week, but at that point, I was like, I had dropped most of my classes because I was having a bad time.
Yeah.
So I think I missed like 1 or 2 classes to play Fallout. There'd be many times in college that I would skip class to play video games. It wasn't because of video games. It was because I didn't want to go to class. I'm not gonna lie to you.
That's fair.
Because I didn't want to leave my home. Video games were just an excuse.
I am curious, do you guys remember the first rated M games you've played, and, like, if you had to trick or convince your parents?
No, they just let me play
play
Turok, you know?
Turok was your first?
Turok 2, actually.
I think
I
I
watched
played
my dad
Halo
play
3
it.
before I knew it was rated M. The first one I was allowed to play, the first one I bought myself, I did not. It was like my 14th birthday or something, and I made my mom drive me to GameStop and come in with me to buy Call of Duty Black Ops.
Yeah.
And I played it for like 3 or 4 hours and realized I hated it.
Yeah, my parents let me
Never
play
bother
all
again.
the old Call of Duty games and everything. It was just GTA that was like their sticking point. That you shouldn't play that, and I'm like, that's fine. Because
Well, GTA
I also
was the one that
wasn't
was
allowed
highest-
to watch Family
highest
Guy
profile.
or South Park as a kid, which is why
I
I was
wasn't
allowed
either.
to play whatever video games I wanted. But Family Guy and South Park were off the table.
I wasn't allowed on YouTube as a kid.
I was. They didn't care.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed to watch I wasn't allowed to watch YouTube, which drove me to the dredges of Google Video to find Charlie the Unicorn.
wow.
Which,
See,
and that's where your parents should do their homework because Google Video was so much worse than YouTube.
See-
Google Video had no administration at all.
Yeah, I had a unique situation growing up where I had a computer growing up. Like from
Yeah.
5th grade onwards, my parents bought me like a little Dell desktop.
I had one as well.
Yeah, like the crappy CRT monitor and everything. 4th, 5th grade, they bought it so that I could do homework on it, allegedly, and then I game on it a bunch too. But they didn't allow me to have internet access, or at least my mom didn't.
Oh,
So I
internet,
didn't have internet until on my own PC until I got my laptop in like freshman, sophomore year of high school.
I had internet, but I had one of those like blockers. Like
Yeah. My dad, my dad let
like
me
a
just
child
have
block.
unrestricted access to the internet when my parents got divorced. So in like middle school, I was just unrestricted on the internet.
No, I
Yeah.
remember for the
Like-
we had internet for as long as I can remember, but I distinctly remember I never really used it until
Yeah.
middle school.
I got heavy.
I was just
into
like, I don't
game
know what the
modding
point
at
is.
that point. Like,
I was like, I don't know what the point of this thing is, so I'm just not going to use it.
I'm the opposite. I used it constantly. I was playing Flash games.
yeah,
and,
Flash games, modding, downloading mods for games.
Oh, I didn't PC game until like late middle school.
I was a big
so-
PC gamer all
No,
my childhood.
I actually
really.
remember really young. I was a big PC gamer.
Yeah.
I played all sorts of. There were like SpongeBob games, and
RTSs,
like I played.
whatever
Roller Coaster
my dad
Tycoon.
could give me, I'd play.
Yeah, I guess when I was really young, I had the PC ports of Sonic 1, 2, and 3. I had the Sonic Mega Hits collection or whatever, or the Sega Mega collection or whatever on PC. They ported a bunch of different Genesis games to PC. I played that all the time.
Yeah,
Total aside,
It's-
but this PlayStation State of Play coming up, which it'll
Mm-hmm.
be out by the time this episode's out. There's a rumored Sonic Generations remastered, and you know what it's called?
What?
Sonic X Shadow Generations.
Whoa,
That's just not Sonic Generations.
that's so
anymore, first of
right.
all.
That goes so hard actually. As a Shadow the
I-
Hedgehog enjoyer,
Can I
Sonic
just-
X Shadow, just like your fanfics, right, Connor?
yeah, just like my
Making-
fanfics.
Yeah, that's a bad title.
That's my
Making-
fanfics.
Remastering
Connor.
Sonic the Hedgehog or remastering Sonic Generations is nothing if not an admission of guilt that they've not made a good Sonic game since it.
Literally,
I mean,
like-
if it's true that this game also has Shadow, I'm convinced that it's like tied into the movie somehow.
Yeah. No, I would play the hell out of a remaster
Also-
of Sonic Adventure and Sonic Adventure 2. But
Instant
remastering,
Buy for me if this has Shadow. I'm a
I
huge
feel like
Shadow fan.
I feel like
Using the
I'd
original.
kill if they.
Oh, no way, was he?
If we
Yes.
got back the
I had
Sonic
no idea.
levels from Unleashed, I'd kill. Because those were a lot of fun.
there's a mod for Sonic Generations
Yeah,
to play.
I hope
those.
they bring it to the if there's a remastered version, I hope they bring the Sonic Unleashed maps to the remastered version.
But yeah, you didn't get to play as Shadow, but he was a boss fight in it.
Yeah, like I ironically think Sonic Unleashed was good if it wasn't for the stupid werehog.
I think
Yeah.
that's a pretty common opinion.
Yeah, like it was solid. The Sonic levels were good, but no, it's even wild now that like gaming has progressed out of the don't talk to strangers on the internet phase. Like now that's just normal.
For kids above a certain age, it is. I still don't.
Growing up, it was like never talk to people on the internet. Stranger danger, and now it's like, oh, you met your friends on the internet, you can talk to them.
Yeah, I think it's an effect of there just being so many people online now.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and just by the fact that more people are good than bad, you're probably going to encounter mostly good people that
Yeah.
you can make friends with or whatever.
Especially as
And
an
I may-
adult now, like half my friend group now consists of people that live in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And I did not meet them in college, in fact.
I made some good friends playing Mabinogi. I had a buddy named Aaron that I still think about from time to time. I have no way of reaching him now. Neither of us have played that game in like
Nah, you didn't
8
get
years.
contact information. Yeah,
I
that's
had his
sometimes what
Skype.
happens.
I had his Skype.
Yeah, I was in a Discord server with a guy I met in Roblox like 20 years ago at this point. Honestly.
Dang.
Not 20 years, but we're getting there. My Roblox account is almost 20 years old. It is
Dude.
16 years old right now, I think. It was
Roblox was some of the
2008.
first programming I
Yeah.
ever did, trying to learn Lua to make Roblox games.
Yeah, Roblox, like, seeing that game evolve from, like, oh, you can't chat with people unless you're trusted, to, yeah, there's not voice chat.
Is there? Wow,
There's voice chat now. I'm not even kidding. Like, you can allow voice chat. I remember when, like, chat was heavily controlled and brought to certain groups of people only. Now it's
Yeah.
just everyone has it. They got rid of guest accounts. Like, that's wild.
Yeah.
But it's wild what the game's come to after however long.
So I'm just curious. Like, do your parents, like, whenever you go back home or whatever, like, and they see you playing a game, do they still comment sometimes?
Yeah, they still.
on-
If you didn't spend all that time playing, well, he used to, but now that I'm gainfully employed, he's kind of been quiet about playing video games and not applying myself.
My parents don't
Like,
talk about it
they
at all.
don't, he
now.
doesn't care anymore.
Mine rarely do, but ever so often I'll be playing a violent video game, and they'll be like, "Can't you play something non-violent?" Like,
They never
come
say
on.
that. They're like,
Are we really still doing this?
I don't have any big video games when I go home. I'm
Yeah.
playing handheld or something. They can't see it.
Yeah.
So the
I just I don't know. Like, I remember playing, I think 5 years ago or something. I was back from college or something. No. God, I'm so old now. 5 years ago, I was graduating college.
yeah.
But last time I came
Yeah,
home
it
from
feels rough,
college,
doesn't
I
it?
remember maybe closer to 7 or 8 years ago now. God, wow. But I was playing Call of Duty, and my mom was just like, "Please don't do that." And I'm like, I'm gonna do that, but thanks for your concern.
Yeah, we're all going to be
I'm
30 by the end of this
23.
decade. That's scary.
yeah. No, I'm 30. in
We're going to
3
hit the
years.
Matt Pat
Yeah, I'm the
retirement age
youngest.
soon. Yeah.
So true.
But yeah, I really do think once the marketing ramps up for Grand Theft Auto 6, we're gonna revisit all this again, and it'll be just like the good old days.
Wait, no, we're video game podcasters. We won't retire. We'll be
Yeah.
making podcasts well into our
Yeah.
60s.
Was there was a panic around Wolfenstein, wasn't there? The new Wolfenstein where Nazis took over America. Didn't that cause a little?
Yeah, I think people were mad that the Nazis were Nazis or something. You know,
Yeah.
like, oh my god, the Klans hanging out with the Nazis? That never happened. Like,
Yeah.
I think it was like there's always the right wing panic every time something portrays them in a negative light. Honestly, not even being
And then
political. It's just the way it happens.
I think Far Cry 5 had a bit of that too, where it was
Yeah.
a religious cult, and then they kind of wussed out and didn't really commit.
Yeah,
to it.
Ubisoft always wusses out. They'll
yeah,
be like,
that was a great premise
look at
for a
this
video game. If they had
premise.
I
fully
know.
gone in on
Wuss
that.
out.
Yeah.
They're not. They're
No,
afraid.
but they're always too afraid to make a statement.
Yeah.
AAA games are weenies.
Very weenie. Power World would never.
No, Power
Power
World.
World.
Power World would never
Power
make
World
a
would go whole
statement. Yeah.
hog.
It's already made a statement.
I mean, there's already slavery in the game.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right. Any other examples of moral dissent you wanted to discuss before we get into what we're playing?
Oh man, I think we covered
think I'm
most
good.
of it. I mean, every time a sex scene comes out in a video game before this current decade, when now they're just normalized. Like, I think it was wild. the
I
first
actually
time-
do
yeah.
remember. I was gonna say, I think I do remember there being a little bit of fuss over the bear stuff in Baldur's Gate. Like when that trailer came out and it showed that scene. Like I remember, like it felt kind of like deja vu because there were like news blurbs about it, but it died down very
So
quickly.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, does any of the three of us watch the news?
No,
Like CNN, Fox?
I don't have cable.
Yeah.
When I go back home, my parents are always watching MSNBC, so I
Yeah,
see
same.
stuff.
See, my parents are always watching Fox News, so I get the
Oh, I'm sorry.
yeah, I get that take. Tucker Carlson
Yeah.
isn't on it anymore, so I'm spared from his brain
No,
rot. I
he's-
got to go
he's on
elsewhere for
Twitter
that.
now.
But
But yeah, I no, like in general, absolutely not.
Yeah,
Like,
so, like,
I have
I
much better
wonder-
things to do with my time.
I wonder how often this comes up, and the three of us would just have no idea because
I
we
honestly,
don't-
it probably comes up every day. But I
Well,
feel like
here's the thing. Here's why I think we would hear about it, because there would be a news piece about it. Then on the gaming side, there would be someone covering the fact that there was a news piece. Right?
Yeah.
Like
Grow-
that's
okay.
how I usually
I will
see it.
say, growing up in an era where like frontal nudity was a faux pas in gaming, and you'd never see that in AAA, and then booting up something like The Witcher, where it throws like nipples right in your face immediately, pretty much. That's wild. That's a wild transition. I'm like, I thought I'd never see this. In a way,
We've
you know,
made it.
like we've made it. We've made it to the point where a AAA
No,
video
I remember
game
for the longest
just
time.
throw
You're right.
nipples
For the
at me.
longest time, there was no like full frontal nudity
Yeah.
at all. Like even in like rated M games that had like a
because it was
M
like
rating for
because
sex.
not even Mass Effect did. Mass Effect didn't put nipples in its sex scene until Andromeda, and honestly, that made Andromeda inferior. I'm kidding.
That alone, yes,
That alone was
made
the reason
Andromeda.
why I hated Andromeda.
else.
Because it had nipples. No. But
Yeah.
like for the longest time, games were like, no, you can't see what's underneath there. They're going to be in underwear. And then like, I think God of War had like a secret sex scene. God of War 2 had a secret sex scene too, didn't it?
Like the old one?
Yeah. I think if you went like back on the boat, there was like a
that was
secret,
God of War 1,
yeah,
I
was
believe,
it 1 or
right?
2?
I think it was think it was 1 or maybe 2 as a separate one. Like those games were filled to the brim with like just like if it's edgy, put it in, basically.
Like it wasn't even intending to be like, oh, it's just like, ooh, it's just edgy because it's new and forbidden.
But that was kind of like the point behind those games.
Yeah.
Like it was very intentionally
and that's what made them really
ultra-violent
good
and ultra-controversial. Yeah, and that's what made them appealing.
Yeah, like at the time, violence was like, oh, you can't do that, you can't do that. But the thing is, during that period that those games were coming out, what was in the theaters but Saw? Like you were going to movie theaters and seeing people's like skulls get ripped apart, but a video game showing like nipples was illegal. Like
that's something that's always been really weird about the US because it's kind of the opposite in Europe where nudity is not scandalized, but violence is a little more taboo than it is here.
Yeah, which honestly makes more sense.
It makes
to
a
me.
lot more sense.
Yeah, like you had straight up torture porn on the movie screens, but God forbid they put a sex scene in a video game. Oh no. What are the kids going to think? They're rubbing their bodies against each other in a way.
Dude, that's the thing, like, I think people have realized, like, well into the information age, is that kids will lose their quote-unquote innocence when they're, like, 10 years old.
Like,
maybe earlier nowadays. I don't know.
I'm firmly of the stance that, what is it? What is it, so I don't sound like a weirdo? Kids are going to have sex with each other. There's hormones pumping. Teens, not kids.
Teens, yeah.
Correction, teens, but, like, they're going to have sex. They're horny teenagers. They're gonna have sex.
But
with
no,
each other.
even disregarding that, like a 10-year-old's gonna know what everything is.
Yeah,
like they're gonna know what a penis is.
Yeah, if they're a boy, it's been attached to them for 10 years, so I figure they should know what it is.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people that don't agree with that.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, but that's the reality, right? Like if you go to public school, there's no filter. You're gonna know everything.
There's gonna
by the
be
time you're
one
around
kid
10 years
who's
old.
not who's not like kept sheltered, who's gonna
like
be
obviously
like,
there are sheltered children, but like if you're part of the public school system, there's no getting away.
Like
from
I
it.
remember in 5th grade, we were making sex jokes. Like they were they were innuendo sex jokes, but they were sex jokes nonetheless. Like if 5th graders are doing it and know what those mean, then it's just gonna happen. You can't protect your kids forever.
At the end of the day, it is like your responsibility as a parent to be informed.
Yeah.
First of all, and then use that information to make decisions in what or what not to show your kids.
Yeah.
And that's why I think like when our generation is having kids and stuff, like we're not going to have those problems that our parents had where we just like blanket ban on like violent video games
or like
blanket ban
swearing,
on M-rated games.
Like if I had kids, I don't think I'd feel bad swearing in front of them.
We have the ability to use nuance to determine what is or isn't appropriate.
Yeah. Like, hey, I don't think the kids should engage with this media yet. Because it's all down to individual discretions, and we can't just blanket ban violent video games because some, like, Midwestern mother of one got offended that, like, someone died, you know?
And we did get close to that reality, but thankfully
very close
we
to
dodged it.
That was going to be our reality, and I think gaming never would have recovered. Now gaming's mature. People like games can be art. Games can send a message. Games can just be fun, and they can do it with whatever medium the artist desires. Honestly, and I think that's what makes them good.
Yeah,
I agree.
Because if we just kept games in the realms of children, it'd be the same as cartoons. Like we'd just end up with like a SpongeBob, the SpongeBob of gaming, really, that just keep coming out year after year. Hurt nobody and just sell, which we kind of do. That Call of Duty exists, but
right.
Call of Duty exists.
Call of Duty is the SpongeBob of gaming.
Like, I think gaming by shaking the label of it's just for kids really improved the entire ecosystem over saying, "Oh, they're just for kids. They're not for adults to enjoy."
Well, that's the crazy thing too. Like even games that are quote unquote made for kids, so a lot of times the biggest audience of those games are adults. Like Pokemon.
Yeah, like Pokemon's
Pokemon,
biggest
for example.
audience is, I believe, like kids that grew up with Pokemon.
Yeah,
Do you
people
guys
in
have
their late
numbers
20s
on
and
that?
30s.
Because I don't know if that's true.
Everybody I know in my workplace
I don't have numbers on
likes
that.
Pokemon. I
but
know a
I feel
34-year-old
it
who's been
deep
still
down that
playing
that's true.
Pokemon games. Like,
I'd need to see some stats because it is very popular with children.
yeah, it's also popular with adults like our age because they
I
grew
know,
up with
but-
it and they're like, "Oh, I remember Pikachu." Like,
I've got a lot of beef with Game Freak, but they have those numbers and we don't.
yeah,
So like, and they're clearly targeting children. So I have to assume most of the audience is children,
maybe. No, I
or
think,
at least a sizable enough chunk that they don't want to lose it.
yeah, I think games you can't just make a game for one audience because it's just not gonna sell as well as you think.
Well,
Like
that
we've
depends on your
seen, yeah,
budget.
we've definitely seen a demise in edutainment games. Like
yeah.
you remember Elmo's Number Adventure, like
I remember Math Blaster.
yeah, like
dude.
Math Blaster, Elmo's Number Adventure. Those are gone now. Now they've
Yeah.
been replaced with like more mass market appeal games.
Well, they exist with mobile apps.
Yeah, they're
Mobile
super
games,
small
I
now.
think,
They
still.
moved to mobile
Yeah.
games for lower budget and lower
Well, they were
overhead.
pretty low budget.
Yeah.
They were always pretty low budget.
But like now we're seeing like even games for kids are decent, you know? I'm trying to think
Yeah,
of some
I-
examples, but like
I don't play any games that I think are specifically for kids, other than like maybe Pokemon.
I feel like some AAA games that have released recently I've been like, oh, it's
Like
for a
maybe-
younger audience.
Well, I mean,
Super
like
Mario
we're
Bros.
talking
Wonder.
about.
Yeah.
Yeah,
like
Mario
most
games
Nintendo
and such.
games are kind of like other
They're
than
just
Zelda. I
casting
think
a wide net.
I think
really don't
Zelda.
think they're for kids.
Yeah, I think Zelda is the only series that's objectively like, hey, it's for like the teen and later audience.
And Metroid.
And Metroid, yeah. And they have their different audiences, but I think Mario has been their most accessible titles.
Metroid is definitely for adults.
Yeah.
That game's way too hard for kids.
Yeah, I mean, so is Tears of the Kingdom.
Well, we've had this discussion before.
Yeah.
I feel like kids can play hard games just fine.
yeah,
if they really put their mind to
yeah,
it.
if a kid
Yeah.
thinks they can beat a game, they'll beat it. I remember throwing my head against a Link's Awakening and sitting there in my bed thinking about a puzzle for hours until I eventually
Kids just-
figured it out.
Kids also just don't need to beat games
Yeah.
to feel satisfied with them. I think the first game I ever beat was Wind Waker, and I had played dozens by then. Like, beating a game was just not on my radar.
Yeah.
I thought they were infinite for the most part, and I was fine with that.
Yeah, games, you don't have to beat them to have fun.
Yeah,
I think that's where we lie. You got on a tangent there.
yeah. I think I'm ready to talk about games we've been playing.
Yeah.
What are you playing, Connor?
I started the Resident Evil 2 remake yesterday.
Oh, nice.
I am not far enough in it to give like any strong opinions other than like immediately I see why people love this franchise. Like it
Oh, you're finally okay. Awesome.
I see it just has a lot of style. It has a lot of mainly the style. Like it's just
It has
cool-
just the right amount of like, for lack of a better term, Japanese weirdness.
it's campy. Yeah.
where it's campy, but like not overly so.
Sometimes it's pretty campy. Like there's a scene in Resident Evil 2 where you step outside because you know that your friend Claire is like stuck outside and a helicopter crashes right beside you
Yeah.
and you're like blown back by the explosion and then you just get up and move like you're fine and you go talk to your friend and then the helicopter explodes again and now everything's on fire and you have to like go do something else and neither of you ever talk about the helicopter. Like it. And it's like, it's Leon's
The
first,
goofiness is definitely part of that series.
like it's Leon's first day as a police officer and like all of his coworkers are dead and he doesn't mourn them for a single second. He just picks up ammo off their corpse.
like,
It's a very weird game, but I get it. It is fun. Like it is not very scary, but like it does startle you every once in a while when like a body you were certain was dead, like
Right.
lurches up to attack you again. And like the
Yeah.
resource management stuff is a little annoying, but not so annoying. I can't stand it.
Yeah, I feel like Resident Evil games, more so than other horror games, they're puzzle games in the same way I was gonna say in the same way as Zelda is, but maybe less of it.
I was gonna say it's more like Uncharted, like because the
I
puzzles
think they're
so far
little.
are very.
I think they're a little more puzzly than Uncharted at the
Maybe
end
I'm
of the day.
not far enough in because all the puzzles I've done so far are very easy. It's like,
But like that's what I'm saying. The whole game is a combination of like survival, third person shooting, and puzzles. Like that's the whole game.
And it works. It's fun. I'm enjoying it so far.
Yeah, and I think you're still very early on. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts as you progress.
It's not
further.
very long, is it? I know that it's like
No.
Resident Evil 3 that's famous for being like 3 hours long. But
Yeah, Resident Evil 3, especially the remake, got cut extra short. But Resident Evil 2 is like like 8 to 10 hour game. Like it's
okay,
a game.
I'm doing my first playthrough as Leon Kennedy. I don't know if I'll go back and play as Claire. It depends on how different her playthrough is.
I haven't played as Claire. Leon's is like the main story.
Okay.
And Resident Evil 2 and 4 feature Leon. And I think
2
he's
a prequel to 1?
I don't know. I don't know anything about the overall story, and I
Okay.
haven't played 1. But I've only started with Resident Evil with the remakes.
Yeah.
But the remakes definitely captured my interest.
Yeah, I'm enjoying 2. I think I enjoy the action ones more. 7 bored me to tears. Like, genuinely could not be bothered to finish it. I had it on Game Pass. I am not bored with 2. I'm not, like, enamored with it, but I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, I'm very curious to hear your thoughts as you progress, because I think you will even more warm up to the game as you play it.
I think that's likely, yeah. Also, I do have one complaint. This game just does not like the color black. I'm playing it on an OLED in a dark room because I'm like wanting to get into it, and it is just the whole screen is gray. Like it is just not mastered to have the color black in it anywhere, and it kills me.
Yeah, I actually think I remember that about that game.
It is
Like, where
actually
it wasn't-
really annoying.
It had like a filter over it almost.
Yeah, I was like messing with the HDR settings and stuff, trying to be like, what is wrong with this game? Why is it so gray? And I might as well be playing on an LCD panel, which is a little annoying. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, no, Resident Evil, like, I got into it a lot later than, because it's been around for a long time, but it has definitely won my heart over. I'm a huge Resident Evil fan nowadays, and again, one of Capcom's many aces at this point.
I want to play 4, but I'm in a pinch where the 4 remake, I want to play it in VR because they've done it in VR twice now. They did a full conversion of the original game to VR for Quest, but that's like for the Meta Quest 2. I don't think it has any Quest 3 enhancements or anything. It's not going to be very pretty. It's going to look like the original GameCube game pretty much. But they did a VR mode for the 4 remake on PS5, but it's only on PlayStation VR.
I hear the 4 remake VR mode is very good.
Yeah, I imagine it's just very similar to the Quest remake, but I want the graphics. I don't know what I'm going to do about that one. There are a couple of mods you can do, and it really depends on how good the mods are, whether or not I do it on PC or on Quest.
That'd be kind of wild, man. Like playing Resident Evil 4, like a historic game for the first time in VR.
I know.
That's like a perspective almost no one has.
Yeah. But I'm gonna play it in VR when I play it.
That's awesome. That's gonna be fascinating. Hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I actually haven't been playing a ton of VR because my cat's been sick, and one downside of VR is that if you're trying to keep an eye on something, you're not in VR because you just can't. Yeah. So I'm probably gonna have to get my VR legs back and everything in the coming weeks.
Resident Evil 2. Who would have thought?
It's a fun game. It's on Game Pass.
All right, I will go next because I have a very brief one, and I haven't been playing too much. But me and a buddy did hop into Human Fall Flat for a bit and just knock out several levels, and it's a really good game, man. Like,
had you ever played it before?
I've like messed around with it before, but I never actually sat down to
it's really
play it. But like the levels are thoughtfully designed, and like the mechanics, like the controls are annoying, but like just so that like you can master them. They're not like totally just like impossible to fully control. Like once you get used to the control style, because it is very floaty
Yeah.
and hard to control on purpose, but like it's intentionally done so that way. And once you get used to it, you can pretty reliably control your character.
No, I think of Human Fall Flat as like the progenitor to games like Party Animals and like Gang Beasts.
Yeah.
And I really
No,
like
Gang Beasts was the one I was thinking of, because maybe I hadn't played Human Fall Flat before, but I definitely did play Gang Beasts.
Yeah.
And it felt very similar.
I love Human Fall Flat. It has this weird thing where when I played it, it just ends like very suddenly. Like you just finish a level and then the credits roll.
Oh yeah, right. Like a level, yeah.
Yeah.
Like you just sort of jump off into the void and then you fall into the next level, basically.
Yeah, and there was no indication that I was on the final level or anything. I just finished the level and the credits started rolling. I think this was like many years ago, and I think they've added levels.
But they keep
since
adding
then.
levels.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I got the impression just by playing the game that like this game has been updated for a while. Like,
but they're not adding levels all the time. Like they take a pretty long time. So it's a weird one. I need to come back to it and play the ones I haven't played yet.
But yeah, the levels are all kind of like bite-sized little puzzles. And they're a lot of fun. And it's a comedic game too, just because of how wonky the controls are. A lot of times you accidentally like flop off a ledge and you're like hanging on for dear life.
Yeah.
Trying to get back up.
It's a really good
like,
game to just throw on while you're hanging out with somebody too.
And it is a lot of fun just sort of messing with people if you're playing multiplayer as well.
Yes.
Because, like, if you wanted to, you could basically prevent your friend from accomplishing anything in the level.
Does it have
if you want to be that guy?
I thought this game was only multiplayer.
No, you can play through the level single player.
Oh, I just don't think you should.
Yeah, it's so much better with two people. Like, I definitely had, like, a Lion King moment with one of my friends where he was hanging on for dear life and I just walked up to him and like,
live the king.
Yeah, basically. But I failed at doing that and we both fell off and died.
It's a good game.
It's a fun game. Very simple game, but they knew what they were doing when they made it.
Yeah.
Potential for a lot of hilarity and clever levels too. So, recommend it. All right. Mike?
I've been playing Timberborn. I don't know if I've talked about this here yet.
I don't know, but that's like the beaver automation game, right?
Yeah, it's the beaver
Timberborn.
colony builder game. So it's basically a city builder, but instead of humans, you're playing post-apocalyptic beavers. So all the humans are dead.
I did not know it was
Yeah.
post-apocalyptic.
All the humans are dead, and they left the world in ruins, and it's your job as beavers to build a colony. And being beavers, and there's drought cycles and everything, and they just introduced bad water, which is water pollution that could just happen. But what you can do in Timberborn is slowly build up hydroengineering projects. So you can dam up rivers, you can set up floodgates and lock systems, and the water behaves like water would when it's presented with like an obstacle. So it'll go up to the level of the flow that it starts from.
Yeah.
So you could create artificial lakes and everything. But why you have to do this is because otherwise the land is unfarmable unless there is water nearby. You have to irrigate the land to grow crops on it, or else it's unusable land. And with drought cycles and everything, you have to make sure you have enough water to grow your crops, or else they're going to die.
It's an interesting game.
Yeah, so it's one of those city builders that stands out, not because I'm sitting there hoarding resources for the bad times, but because I'm using innovative problem solvings for the bad times. Like, how am I going to solve this drought? I'm going to build a dam, and I'm going to set up a system of floodgates to keep the river flowing.
Yeah, this kind of game is definitely up my alley.
Yeah.
It's kind of reminding me... Do you ever play that game Banished?
It is very much Banished, but with beavers, actually.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. It's reminding me a lot of Banished just looking at it.
But instead of having to hoard resources, clever problem solving will solve all your problems. If that makes sense.
Dude, this is crazy. Like, I'm watching, like, a trailer with the volume off, and, like, I just saw this beaver build, like, a robot beaver,
Yeah.
and the robot beaver started, like, automating a lot of
Yeah,
stuff.
there's robo beavers that you can build to automate, like, a lot of the bad water production, because the beavers can't touch that or they'll get sick now. There's two different races of beavers. You have the folk tails and the iron teeth. And the folktales are your traditional like country bumpkin beavers who believe in the natural way, and the irontails have breeding pods. You can grow more irontails in vats. Fun fact.
Crazy.
But no, they have their little breeding pods and everything, and they are more focused on automation and high level metal production than the folktales are. But it's a very interesting game. I play it on and off. It's easy to get into and out of. So I've been kind of playing it lightly over the last
Yet another
week and a half.
early access game.
Yeah. They're lovingly updating it though. I think it's probably going to release within a year or two.
Says
It's
it
been
was
out a while.
released
Yeah.
2021, so 3 years in early access. But it seems to be really like well received.
Yeah.
It's got a super high
It
approval
is a
rating
very
on Steam.
like it is technically it feels feature complete now. There's no end game, but they're early access where they're just adding more content to it. Like right now you do have a full-fledged city builder with all the systems in place, crop management and everything. It's just they're adding more, like Badwater was added, bots were added.
Dang, and it's 20%
Yeah.
off for only $20 right now.
Yeah,
it's pretty good.
shipped with all the Hydra engineering though. Like all the floodgates were there at launch. But overall,
Yeah, this I feel like I might pick this one up. This seems like something that I
it's a fun little
enjoy
game.
very much.
It's low stress, really. It's kind of chill. If you know what you're doing, it can be very low stress. Like the drought timer just hits on, you just set it to 3 times speed and watch the drought. I haven't dealt with Badwater yet, and I'm not excited to deal with Badwater because I know it's going to put my entire systems to the test, all my floodgates and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's just because I'm like fresh sort of off of Power World, but I am in a base building, city building kind of mood.
Yeah, Timberborn's not bad. $20 and you get beavers. Like, yeah,
So true.
$20 and you get beavers.
yeah, beavers.
Slap that right on the box.
Got beavers in it.
Yeah, what else could
10 out
anyone
of
ask
10. There's
for?
beavers in it. Like, no, I just think it's very novel when they feature a city builder that doesn't use people and has you interact with the world in a way that's different from your standard city builder.
Yeah, it is clever. They
Yeah.
incorporated beaver mechanics into the game, and I think that's
Yeah, I think that's
Pretty
that's
smart.
very smart.
all right. Do we have any other games?
I don't have anything. It's literally been Timberborn and Power World, and I've quit playing
Yeah.
Power World, so it's just Timberborn.
I haven't played a ton of games, so I had time for a couple hours of Resident Evil.
I do know that next weekend I'm going to be talking about Persona
Oh,
Yeah.
no.
for sure.
Oh yeah.
So, can't wait for that. For the first time in a couple months here, I think. Man, what was the last time? Maybe Spider-Man that I'm like anticipating a game like this.
I'm always
very
anticipating games,
excited.
but they never hit right, you know?
I have a feeling Persona will. Nothing hits quite like a Persona
Well,
game.
it's a remake,
IMO.
so like it it's basically guaranteed to. It already hit once.
Oh yeah, it already hit once, and this is like a superior version. All right, so I think that'll wrap us up for this week. Thank you all for listening. You can follow us at @Podcast Game Talk on Twitter. Please like, rate, and review us on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or any other podcast services you use. Click the link in the description to join our Discord and talk to us there. Thank you, Connor and Mike.
Yeah. See you guys next week.
See you next week. Bye.